and welcome to an Everyday Canines video. In this video I want to talk to you about tunnels under contact equipment. Now in general our tunnels are always sitting alone as an obstacle on its own. You wouldn't expect any obstacle to go over them apart from the contacts. And now when I'm saying contacts, I am not referring to the seesaw. You would not have a seesaw with a tunnel under it. Doesn't make any sense, does it? Because the seesaw couldn't go down. But you know, just to clarify, I'm not talking about the seesaw. I'm talking about the A-frame and the dog walk. Now, what you can see quite often, and it's becoming quite a regular feature in courses now, even at lower levels, is a tunnel under a piece of the contact equipment, either your A-frame or your dog walk. As similar to what I've got set up here, this is a pretty standard sort of conformation that you would see. Now, the thing to consider when we're looking at tunnels under obstacles, let's have a quick look at safety first. First off, we want our tunnel is not leaning on any other struts or putting strain on them that could interfere with the stability of the obstacle. Secondly, it's well bagged down with sandbags so that it's not going to ruckle and move underneath. And thirdly, we're not going to ever be asking our dog to come out of a tunnel like this and onto a dog walk. If you remember previous videos, we've talked about the fact that dog always has to have a straight line up onto an obstacle. So whether this is a dog walk or if this was an A-frame, there's no way you'd ask your dog to come from there and try and turn up this dog walk. For a start, it's not even 5 metres, and it's a 5 metre minimum distance between obstacles. So I think the distance is... it's 2.5-ish. But even if it was set back, so it was 5 metres, you would not be asking your dog to come out of that tunnel and come up the A-frame. It's just the dog walk. It isn't going to happen because that's not a safe angle up the dog walk. So you'd always be looking to go somewhere, maybe to a jump, go out to a jump and then come back on yourself. Now, if this was set back at 5 metres, you could ask your dog, and see it, of course, that the dog is asked to turn tightly off the dog walk and go back in the tunnel. It's not very common in this country. You wouldn't see it very often at all, and most people aren't too keen on it, but it is a possibility. I did have one course several years ago where there was a jump here, and my dog had to come tightly off the dog walk and over the jump. So though you can't have a tight turn onto a dog walk, you can have a tight turn off. So those are sort of some of the basics to talk about when we think about course setup and when you're training this. Most of the time when people are training tunnel and dog walk together, the idea is actually about discrimination. When judges set something like this up, what they're actually doing is they're asking, can your dog understand its cues, whether they be body or verbal, and understand when it's being asked to do a tunnel and when it's being asked to do a dog walk, or does the dog just pick one? Some judges will make these harder or easier. It depends on the level. So if this was at a low level, I would expect the judge to perhaps ask me to do that tunnel, but I would be able to be here so that I can make it really easy for the dog to get there. On a higher level, I would expect the judge to set it up so that it made it difficult for me to be there and guide the dog, and so I'd have to ask the dog of its own volition to run past the dog walk and not take the dog walk and go into the tunnel. That's when things get tricky and when you are having to really rely on your cues very heavily, certainly your verbal cues. If you've ever watched me and Sparrow doing this, this is a big challenge for her. In fact, I've been working on this one for a week or so with her, and we still haven't mastered her being able to find the tunnel or the dog walk without me really having to put a lot of effort into it and pretty much push her into one or the other. And she's a grade 7 dog, so she's a top level dog, but that's just who she is. In contrast, Swift is very good with her discriminations, and usually she can find these without any problem. But it's just one of those things, and it is a training thing. It's an ongoing training thing. It's something that certainly at a beginner level you will be just doing on a simple mode, where you're just going to be asking tunnels, asking for dog walks, and you're going to be helping with the body. So as you get higher levels, then it starts getting trickier. Another thing to consider with the tunnel, and I see it all the time, and it depends where the tunnel is as much as anything, but even at a situation like this, what happens is the dog comes up the dog walk or the A-frame and they go, "I don't look right." there's a strange thing sticking out here. And some dogs can be really spooked by it. Some dogs, it will change the way they perform the contact. I had it with Swift for a while, that if there was, no, I tell a lie, it was with Merlin. If there was a tunnel under an A-frame with Merlin, Merlin's A-frame contact was solid. It was like our best thing. But if there was a tunnel under the A-frame, especially if I had to be further away from him because of the way the tunnel was, it was nearly a guarantee he would miss his contact. It was just one of these things with him. And we tried to work through and train it, but it just became a thing with him. And it can happen, hey gorgeous, because they're not used to it. It changes the picture for them. Some dogs get really spooked by tunnels under contact equipment. Sometimes it just changes the way they run. The other thing to bear in mind is because it sometimes means that the handler has to be further away from the dog, and that can affect things. So when I'm doing my contact training with all my dogs, I like to have the tunnel under my contact obstacle very early on. So I'm not doing many contacts with Magpie just yet, she's at the early stages, but we will come and play with her getting up on the dog walk and just being rewarded or whatever, and there's a tunnel there. And it's just part of the picture. And I'll move the tunnel, I might switch to my smaller tunnel, have it under this bit of the plank instead of further back, because that is allowable. And we'll just play with that so that it becomes part of the picture, so that sometimes there's a tunnel there, sometimes there isn't, and it doesn't matter to her. Because we don't want to get to a stage where she suddenly goes, oh, dog walks and A-frames shouldn't have tunnels beneath them. It's wrong. So that's just something to bear in mind. I mean, I have to say that tunnels and obstacles is one of my favourite things. They present a lot of challenges in your training, but they're fun. And the thing with a tunnel, it's like a big zoom. So when you're getting your dog in some of the tricky things you do, they're going to just zoom through it. It's lovely. So they're one of my favourite things. So it's just a quick look at what you might see on a training course. Certainly in competition, you're going to come across this regularly, and something to be aware of. If you haven't got a tunnel already and you've just got your contact equipment, it might be worthwhile getting a small tunnel, or even just a cheap tunnel, one of them, those really cat tunnels or whatever, just to start getting your dog used to the idea that something can be under the A-frame or dog walk when you're training. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope you've enjoyed this Everyday Canines video. This, as I say, is one of my favourite setups, so let me know if you really like this setup too, because I love tunnels under contacts. I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you have, you might like to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram. And I hope to see you all again very, very soon.